Vă salut, prieteni ai Călătoriei Inimii. Sunt Horia Țurcanu și împreună cu Elena Francis ne-am transformat casa într-un studio de filmare astăzi pentru a primi un oaspete special, doctorul Richard Moss. După cum știți, majoritatea dintre voi, Călătoria Inimii e o chestiune care se referă mai curând la experiența stărilor de conștiință extinsă decât la a vorbi despre stările de conștiință extinsă. Ăsta e unul dintre motivele pentru care l-am invitat să fie împreună cu noi pe doctorul Richard Moss, pentru că este mai curând un practician al stărilor de conștiință extinsă decât un teoretician. Asta nu îl împiedică să scrie și cărți. Cărți pe care le cunoașteți sunt la loc de cinste printre cărțile maestrului interior, Elena Francis. Și subiectul principal pe care o să-l abordăm astăzi aici va fi o discuție despre ceea ce el numește radical aliveness, adică vitalitate radicală. Ce înseamnă chestia asta o să vedem imediat. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Horia. I'm glad to be here.
I was just telling to our friends that they are with us in this journey of the heart, as we know everything what we do. And I was telling them that everything is about experience, mainly than to talk about this. So what is the place of experience in your work? How important is the experience when we talk about expanded states of consciousness?
There's a kind of alchemical mystery that separates people who have been given information. They know it in their heads, and they can apply it in the world in a kind of intellectual sense to function in their careers and in many other ways. And then there's something much more mysterious and much more important, which is the ability for a person to be their own teacher. The ability for a person to learn, and not learn what someone else knows, but learn what you know. Learn what is your living, real sense of truth, of meaning, of purpose, and of direction. And that kind of learning you have to learn with your head, you have to learn with your body, and you have to learn by action, by choice, by doing, and therefore you have to learn through experience. The other really important point about experience is that we're not saying to someone, this experience should give you this. We're saying, this experience gives you an opportunity to invent the meaning for yourself that you will then use to guide your life or to direct your life. And if you are the one that gives meaning to your own experience, and then you are the one who becomes your own teacher. And then you can direct your life in accordance with what you decide, because experience is the real teacher. What you have learned from experience has the deepest sense of meaning for you, the deepest sense of truth and value for you. That's going to guide your life.
We have a deep resonance with this idea for each one to be his own teacher. What are you doing as a guide for people looking for their inner teacher?
I have an expression. I say consciousness loves contrast. So what I do is I try to invite people into experiences that are somewhat different than what they would live every day. I try to invite people into experiences that are a contrast with what they live every day. For example, right now we're talking, okay? But there are ways of talking. And there's talking from memory. There's talking making no sense at all, like blah, 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 gibberish, which makes people silly and often very uncomfortable. We we play with our voices. I will have people play with their voices in a particular kind of structure, but it allows the voice to start to do things, make sounds, not just sing, not just chant, until the very use of the voice seems to start from a place where they're not creating it with their own intentionality. It's living through them. Same thing with movement. You can learn to dance and you can be taught to dance and follow a particular style of dancing, or you can disappear into the dance. So I'm constantly trying to give people experiences where they become absent as an ego, watching themselves. They disappear into dancing, they disappear into breathing. Now when they disappear, they don't become unconscious, they become hyper-conscious, much more conscious. The consciousness isn't a place maybe in the head that's looking, it's inside them, it's everywhere, it's in the room, it's with the people they're with. Suddenly there is a much deeper sense of connection. So if you have an experience of connection, you have an experience that I'm not separate from my world or myself. I'm not having a battle with myself. I'm not arguing with myself. I'm not taking a position in myself that puts me in maybe a conflicting or protective position with you. Then suddenly out of that experience of connection, I say to myself, or the person will say to themselves, connection feels holy. Connection feels healthy. I'm going to live my life so I can experience connection more often. And then once that decision is made, you say to yourself, well, if I want to have greater connection, how would I have to learn to listen to somebody? And now you start to learn through how you listen. And then you say to yourself, I have this extraordinary sense of connection, and if I want to live more of a sense of connection, how would I want to speak to someone? And now you become conscious of, not just what you're saying, but where are you saying it from in yourself? So that's an example of the experience gives the meaning. The meaning then can give the motivation, and then everything becomes practice. Your whole life becomes a practice. Communication becomes a practice. Walking becomes a practice. Dancing becomes a practice. And what are you practicing for? You're practicing so that the part of you that's living is more and more not you, but everything. Life is living through you, and you are living with life. And it's gradual. Sometimes it's a very strong peak experience, but most of the time it's a progression into greater vitality and aliveness and clarity and honesty. And it comes from an experience of connection, an experience of belonging.
This is the radical aliveness that you are talking about in your books.
Radical just means the root, the source.
Can we use this in our everyday life?
If you decide to.
This is one of the main points of our work here in Romania, to make the experiences not to rest only in the space of a workshop or of a seminar.
Not to have them as islands of experiences, one workshop here, another workshop in a month or in a week, but to to bring the experience from a workshop into the daily life.
The ability to experience, in other words, the ability to be touched, to feel, to be moved, is the purpose of having experiences. You don't want to people don't want to come to a workshop and say, "Oh, that was a wonderful experience," and collect the experience, right?
Yeah.
And now when do I have the next wonderful experience?
Yeah, exactly.
The purpose of the experience was to create a contrast so that you can look at your life from a different framework, a different point of view, and make new choices. Because you can't say consciousness isn't a thought. Consciousness is a thought connected to the body. Consciousness is a thought that's felt, and then that's even not consciousness truly until there is a choosing, an action, a behavior. So now I'm behaving, feeling, and thinking with a new sense of purpose. And I'm not collecting experience, because the teaching is that every single moment is the experience. This is all there is this moment. Now I can be very sleepy and numb, or I can be very awake and present. And I teach myself how to be very awake and present everywhere. But that means you have to be willing to feel all the things that most people become very afraid to feel. Vulnerability, the fear of being judged, the fear of abandonment, aloneness, all kinds of sensations and feelings that if you were a baby would be very uncomfortable, and you would want mommy or daddy to protect you, or some caregiver to protect you. When we mature, we're basically saying, we're not asking life to be nice to us, we're asking ourselves to be nice to ourselves no matter what life brings. And not only nice to ourselves, the choice is to bring our hearts to everyone, regardless of what's happening in ourselves. So we start to outgrow self-involvement and start to become concerned with everyone.
So this radical aliveness, this state of perception, of awareness, we can finally cultivate in our life every moment.
If you choose to.
If we choose.
And what is it that makes a person want to choose that? That's a really, I've thought about that a lot.
Is this linked to what you are saying about consecrating, what you choose to consecrate your life to? So if I choose to consecrate to being present and take every opportunity that I create for myself, this could be.
Exactly. To me, the word consecration, well, it literally comes from the Latin and means to make sacred. And ordinarily it means that in a certain context we say this particular situation or this particular place is sacred. A shrine where a famous person has been laid to rest can become consecrated, it becomes sacred. A battlefield where people gave up their lives fighting for a cause. The famous Gettysburg Address that Abraham Lincoln gave when the North and the South in the United States were fighting to stop slavery. And he's consecrating the land where so many men died, fighting for a principle, the ending of slavery in a society that's supposed to be built on government of the people, by the people, for the people. So consecration is, for each of us, a choice. If I want to live my life so that at the end of my life, or at any point in my life, someone who sees me or observes me says, how can I be more like that person? How can I be more like that man? How can I be more like that woman? So you start to feel this sense of aspiration because you see an individual who is embodying and behaving in a way that something in your soul says, that way. Now, I mean, there are many people who see someone who's an entrepreneur and has made a fortune and money, and they say, how do I make more money? So their consecration is to making money, and the power that gives them. Or maybe the idea that will make them safe. Or maybe they have the idea that, becoming wealthy will make them loved. But the deeper resonance of the soul is not to that. It's not about that anything with money is wrong. It's the way that person looks at other people, listens to other people, cares for other people. And if they're in business, what ultimately is the deep vision of the business? Is it just to make a profit, or is it to do something in service to the whole of the world as best as possible, where every single person in that organization is treated with great respect, and everybody in the organization treats the customer with great respect? And so, yes, it's a business, but the business has a consecration to respect, to care about, to honor life, the environment, other people. That's consecration. You have to choose this for yourself. This becomes, your GPS, your spiritual GPS. I'm getting too self-involved. Come back to caring about everyone, not just myself. Oh, now I'm forgetting myself and I'm taking care of everyone else. So come back to respecting myself. You have to have a GPS. And that, for me, the GPS is this notion of consecration. And that comes out of experience. If I have an experience of feeling so at one with life, so loved by life, so in love with life, I may not be able to hold that experience. I can't. It's a transient experience, but it says to me, I'm going to live a little less selfishly. I'm going to live a little more generously. I'm going to have a little more trust that even in the midst of so many things that look terrible, there's something very good, something profoundly beautiful in life. So a little more trust, and that becomes a profound consecration, just to learn to trust.
Talking about this radical aliveness and the capacity to feel, to live finally. We see every day in our workshops and things, people saying, well, I want to do this, I want to live in this way, but I can't because I can't escape to my mind, I can't escape to my emotions. It's like a force beyond of me. Is this, what do you think about this? I suppose that you meet the same kind of people with the same kind of problems.
Oh, I don't have to look outside of anybody. I can look here.
Yeah, but you
Hello
work
out
with
there.
people.
I struggle with my mind. I struggle with my thoughts. My thoughts can make me crazy. I struggle with my feelings. I struggle. So the question is, okay, if I struggle, but ultimately what man do I want to win? The one that's going to complain and be weak and be a victim? Or do I want the man who's going to stand up and try to find some dignity and be generous? That's a choice. And then the answer basically that I give to people is that if you want to play a violin like Yehudi Menuhin, you have to practice thousands and thousands of hours. If you want spontaneous humor and compassion and generosity, like the Dalai Lama, you have to practice for thousands and thousands of hours. So you need to learn how to teach yourself, and then you practice. Nobody teaches Yehudi Menuhin anymore how to play the violin, but he has to keep practicing. If he stops practicing, something in his hands, something in his body, something in his breath, something in the way he hears the music, something in the way he feels the music, will get a little less subtle, refined, magical. So it's the practice. And when someone says this, I say to them, but you're only at the beginning. You know, every human being that you and I meet in our work is already a master, a maestro, as great as Yehudi Menuhin, as great, but they are masters at believing their thinking, fighting against feelings that are uncomfortable, because we started to do that as children. And we watched our parents do it, and we watch everyone do it. So what is the practice? And the practice is to learn to be self-aware, to take some distance from your thinking, to recognize this is a thought. It's I am that which is aware of that thought, so I am more than that thought. This is a feeling. I am, in the deepest sense, that which is aware of the feeling. Therefore, I have a relationship, a choice. Am I going to collapse into this feeling, or am I going to feel it and still, get out there and do life with as much graciousness and gratitude and generosity as I can? It's a choice and it's a practice. And if you practice 10,000 hours of what I'm talking about, you become a master in a spiritual sense. And I don't think there's any end to that. There may be there may be a level where a great musician would say, that was the most pure experience I've ever had of performing that piece of music. And the only thing they could ever hope for again is to feel it again at that similar level. But even if they never felt it again, they'd still play that piece of music with every bit of their being that they could. And so accepting that you can't hold on to anything is part of maturity. Accepting that you can keep growing but won't necessarily be able to see for yourself that you're growing. Your friends will see it, your family will see it, your children will see it, your community will see it. but you may not for yourself see it. Inside you still may feel a great deal of suffering, a great deal of vulnerability, a great deal of fear, a great deal of loneliness. Inside yourself, you're still wrestling, like Jacob with the angel. You know, you're still struggling, but outside, what radiates from you is more and more that this struggle is a struggle to become a better human being, a more complete human being, not a struggle to become a perfect human being. You know?
So first is the choice, after the choice is the practice of this choice, and finally the instrument is the awareness, to pay attention at yourself, at your feelings, at your breath, at your thought, at everything happens in the inner space.
Exactly, and then the instrument is your, let's call it your field, your energy. There is a transmission. When your consciousness is not at war with your feeling, even if the feeling is difficult, when your consciousness is not at war with your thoughts, and the thoughts begin to become more quiet, then something radiates from an individual who is, let's say, more and more embodied and more present. They give off a field, and the field is a transmission, and the transmission helps other people make the journey of consciousness. Give a simple example. I try to be a student of everything. Well, I have a friend who has been heating his house all his life with wood. He lives he's a cattle rancher. He has and he raises cattle. And you know, when the trees fall, he harvests the fallen trees. And so this man, when he picks up an axe and puts a piece of wood on a log, splits, smaller, split. And he takes with his hand tiny pieces of wood for kindling to start the fire in his furnace. When I'm with him and I pick up an axe, I can chop wood very well. When I go home and I'm not near him, I don't chop wood. I'm literally, because I have a fireplace, or I did, and I used to cut my wood, and I'd say to myself, okay, and I'd bring him into my mind. I'd bring his body, his being, his life, his whole quality, and I see him chopping wood, and then I pick up my axe and
And you become very good.
Exactly, which is why we want people that we consider our spiritual heroes and heroines, and we want to bring them into our hearts because we want to absorb the transmission of their lives, and we are, in a sense, inventing our own perception of their value. It's a very concrete image with this man. I watch him do this with an axe. He's so good. And I see that I am better when I'm near him. But that goes on with everything. It goes on with fear. I've met fear in myself a great deal. And so what happens with people who come and do work with me is it gets easier for them to deal with fear in their lives. And we have many fears.
It's a kind of resonance between the human beings.
Yes.
They can resonate between them.
So in that sense, personal transformation is never just for me or you. It's for everyone. It's not an end in itself. There's a transmission, a resonance, and it helps everyone. So we are our brother's keeper, in a very true sense.
I smile because it matches very much with what we do here. In a way, it's almost the same.
Sure, it is the same. If we go deep enough, we're listening we're learning the same things.
What is for you the role of the breath in your work? Because we work very much with the breath, and I'm just curious, what place has the conscious breathing in your work?
We consider the breath as having a true healing power. And I know I had the opportunity to work with you in France a few times, and in the Radical Aliveness in California, and I've felt the importance you put also on the conscious breathing.
The breath is, first of all, there's only one breath.
This is true.
You're born, you come out of the womb, suddenly you breathe, and then we think, because we break things into pieces, that this breath and then this breath and then this breath. But anytime you go into a deeper state of consciousness and you feel yourself being breathed, you don't think, oh, now I'm breathing again. It's just breathing, right?
It's one breath.
One breath. There's only one breath. And it's like light. If we do an experiment, light is a wave. And so right now the light from the sun that is reaching us has never left the sun. It's at the sun and it's here because it's a wave. If we do the experiment in a different way, it's quanta, packets, little packets. You know, and so sometimes we think, oh, this breath. And then sometimes we think, the breath. But when I'm breathing, and I'm conscious of it, a part of my awareness is now fully linked to the present moment. And the present moment is actually all there really is. Everything else is then a creation of the mind. The future is anticipated and imagined. The past is remembered but reinterpreted and imagined. Anything you say about yourself is a judgment of yourself, that more or less accurate, more or less kind, and the same with everyone and everything else. That's the world of thought. The breath is not in the world of thought. It's in the world of being. So the minute you bring yourself to the breath, you're not only in the present moment, you're in being. And that keeps you in your body. And if it keeps you in your body, then you can feel, you start to become very attuned to what is happening here. You know, in this place we call the body, which is not just a physical place, it's a place of consciousness. And now I can feel in this body that a thought is clear and whole, or it poisons me with, let's say, resentment or anger or distrust. And now I can feel, I feel unsafe, but then I can make a choice. Do I defend myself, or do I, what's an intelligent way to be with this moment where I feel unsafe, okay? So I'm so attuned, if I'm in my body, I can listen to the circumstances. I can choose from a deeper sense of wisdom and intelligence. So I'm in being, I'm in the present moment, and it's not an end in itself. I don't want to get narrow with the breath, okay? I want the breath to anchor me in a space that's limitless. It's both right here with these sensations, and it's limitless.
So it's more about feeling. It's more about to feel than to think about the reality.
Exactly. And because feeling is much more intelligent than thinking in that way. In the body, we could say that the body is the most intelligent part of us, because it's like the whole of the evolution of the universe has led here in this solar system, to this planet, to the development of life, to this moment in this body, and we don't know how that happened. We have this faintest hints, but we're here. And we can see clearly that if the earth was bigger and had more gravity, our bodies would look different. If anything changed at all, anywhere, in this solar system, in this planet, in this atmosphere, then we would be... Everything would change. So if I listen deeply here, I'm really listening to the whole universe. I'm listening to everything. How I interpret that, I can't do that with my head. If my head was the biggest supercomputer, my head was a supercomputer as big as the universe, as big as this galaxy, it still could not handle all the information. So then we are listening and responding in accordance with our consecration, in accordance with my GPS that says more generous, more love, more tolerance, more respect,
more compassion,
and to be profoundly strong in that, because I can just imagine men listening to us and thinking, oh, yeah, where's the balls? You know, but no, there's a tremendous strength in being able to be soft. There's a tremendous strength in being able to let other people have their place, to be different in their way of seeing things.
Yeah.
It's a kind of like we retake our bodies in attention, in possession, after thousands of years when the body was looked to as an obstacle to the spiritual experience, mainly in the European way of thinking. The body was like an obstacle to this. The spiritual people in our tradition, they punished their bodies. They considered the body as a space of the sin. So they were looking at God in another part than the body. And now it looks like things are changing. Do you think this is a part of this big changement of consciousness that happens now?
Yes, and I think it's a change that's in some way being led by the deeper feminine. We don't have good words, the divine feminine. And I think this is a kind of knowledge or wisdom that women have innately in their bodies, that they can teach to men in particular. I mean, the last 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years of patriarchy have been men trying to control the body, trying to control the woman, frightened of the feminine, frightened of feeling. If there was a fear, it needed to be conquered. You didn't learn to dance with it in a different way. I often say, if men had been given, a uterus, and suddenly a baby would be growing in them, and they hadn't learned that deeper cellular wisdom of the body that women know innately, the man would immediately say, "Oh my God, what it is," and cut it out to find out what it
to study it.
Yes, well, and in a sense, that's not just the man, that's logos, that's or sometimes partially we could call it the left brain. It's making everything into specific pieces and giving it names and labeling it with words. But the body wisdom is not a word wisdom. It's a wisdom you come to with your breathing and with attention and listening. And one of the things that's really important to learn is to not name it, to not name what you're experiencing, to have a relationship without words, to have a relationship of your awareness, your attention, without naming. And therefore, if you're not naming, and you're just having a relationship, you're breathing into the sensation of yourself, you're breathing into pain, or you're breathing into an anxiety or a worry, or you're just breathing into the joy of ecstatic aliveness and lovemaking, which can get so big that it becomes almost impossible to stay present in it or get big enough to hold it. To learn to have a body big enough to hold ecstasy is a wonderful path that very few people take. But then you have to let go of something else, which is, am I doing this to have an outcome? Am I doing this to be victorious? Am I doing this to be successful? Am I doing this to be powerful? Am I doing this to be safe? And instead I'm doing it because there is a mysterious, profound alchemy that comes from intimacy itself, where I do not know where it's going to take me. And see, now then you have, where do you look for a model for that? Where do you look for something that reflects that? And I just look out the window at nature. I don't think nature has a purpose. It just unfolds. It's an effulgence. It's just an emergence. And nature doesn't say, I will do a mutation now so that we will have better knees, or better legs, or faster runners. It's just this ceaseless effulgence, and some things survive and fit, and some things don't, and they disappear, and and it's the same thing with human behavior. There are certain behaviors now that, in a certain sense, if we keep living them, like dominating the world, naming everything, fragmenting everything, trying to live from our heads down and from our heads out, we're gonna go extinct. But if we start listening deeply in our bodies, then we're going to start knowing something that life knows, capital L, life, that nature knows. And we are just children, we are infants in this journey. We're right at the very beginning, you know. And women and the deep feminine, actually they know it better than men do, and intellect and logos. And these two things have to complement each other. They're not in opposition. We give a label, but we can let go of believing the label. The label is useful. It's not what, it's the difference between map and territory. You know? So, yeah, this to me right now is, we've been imbalanced toward logos, toward masculine, fear of the feminine, not living in our bodies, living from our heads. So now we have to come back. And it's not that there is there's no map. There's no, you can't find a book that's going to tell you how to do this. You have to invent it. If you listen to your life, the two of you are here because you've been listening to your life and it led you here. I've been listening to my life and it led me here. What I want to learn now, more than anything else, is deeper, deeper into this. And through this, all of it. Everything.
The question I would like to ask you is more linked to the conscious relationship. For me and for Horia, this is a way of life. I mean, we consecrate our life to a conscious, loving relationship. And I know you are putting emphasis on that too, also in your books and in your private life. So, what would you like to say about this? How important is this loving, conscious relationship in a big, transforming process we are all in?
Maybe we're at that point in evolution where an aspect of a relationship is procreation, it's having children, for example, and raising them with new consciousness. But also maybe we're at the point where we realize that we don't want to necessarily try to ascend to God in a very male-oriented spiritual practice, but we want to, maybe we want to see what it is that emerges out of intimacy, and that we have such a terrible time, human beings at this stage in our evolution, of our development, to be intimate with the planet. We exploit it. We're not intimate. The most serious crimes happen in families. You know, there's murder, there's war. But if you look all over the world and say, where is the greatest harm done? It's done between people living under the same roof. So to say to ourselves, what if relationship becomes the practice? What if the divine isn't one, but the two, the couple? From that comes the next generation of children. From that comes meeting the deepest psychological fears that come from intimacy between people as they get very close to each other and have to relive anything from their early life that they didn't know how to integrate and what they repressed and put it into, let's say, psychological terminology, the shadow. So everything in the shadow psychologically from early life comes out, and then eventually everything in the shadow from the collective process of how women have been suppressed by men for thousands of years is coming out in every couple, under the roof, you know, in the marriage, and they're working on it, and they're healing it. They're healing it by being incredibly honest with each other, and learning to listen to each other with great depth and not protect. And so you reveal yourself from the depths of yourself to each other. And I live that in as best I can in my partnership, in my couple. I think then relationship, conscious relationship, for people that are in couples or for any individual in relationship to any other person, becomes a path. It becomes the spiritual path. The old path was rise up somehow and attain samadhi, satori, know God, yourself. But why not know God with each other?
Yeah.
Let's see if we can know whatever we mean by God with each other, and that really God isn't one, God is intimacy, God is relationship. God is a dynamic between two or more. And to make that the center of our consciousness work has been the call of my life. I think early on, and I always knew it wasn't right for me, the idea of meditating to achieve some sort of state never really made sense. Now meditation makes tremendous sense to me because it's about observing and listening and watching myself so that I can be more than these limiting patterns and habits that repeat themselves. So conscious relationship to yourself, conscious relationship to another, with another, and then the deeper question, not what does Richard want from his partner, or what does she want from me? What do you, Horia, want from Elena? What do you, Elena, want? That's valid, that's important. But there's another question. What does your relationship want? And sometimes if you come to each other from the place of what you want, that's not what the relationship wants. So you have to start listening. There's a field, not just the field we talked about earlier, that happens when a person is integrated, and a transmission from that integration within a person. There's a transmission from the field of the relationship between two people, and that may be the more important transmission now, that we don't, for instance, travel to India to sit in front of the great master, whether it's a man or a woman, but that we want to start sitting in front of the couples that have consecrated themselves to conscious relationship for the transmission of intimacy, from the field of their relationship, not from him or her, but from the field of the relationship. That intrigues me profoundly, because if we can do it with two, we can do it with three, we can do it between countries, we can do it between tribes, we can do it between religions. But if we can't even do it between two, how do we ever plan to do it between political parties or between nations? It really, the microcosm and the macrocosm in this particular place, or maybe in all places, but certainly here for me, this is the heart of it. I don't want to meditate to be liberated. I want to be meditated so I can get closer, deeper into intimacy in my life with everyone, but particularly with my partner. Because there are places, of deep intimacy in partnership that are the most vulnerable and most beautiful places in all of life.
Thank you, Richard.
Dear Richard, look, this is a Romanian edition of Mandala of Being. Do you like it?
Very much.
Very much. We like it too. It's one of the most important books that we made, and very useful for the people that work with us. But for those who never participate to one of our workshops, neither at your workshops, and they didn't read the book, can you tell us a few things about what is Mandala of Being?
Well, it's a way of trying to show a person who they are, each person, in every moment. And the word mandala means circle from Sanskrit. And the mandala being basically says, every moment is the present moment, but the mind takes us away from the present. Your mind will take you out of the present, and when it does, it takes you into the past and into the future, which is, we all understand, that's the whole notion of time. And then it takes us into ways of judging ourselves or ways of judging other people and essentially everything else in the world. And so that is the continuum that is in psychology and philosophy called subject and object. And so if you could visualize a clock or a compass, instead of north, south, east, and west, north would be the future, south would be the past, east would be all of these stories and thoughts you have about yourself, west would be all of these stories and thoughts you have about men and women and government and God and money and you know, everything, anything you can make an object and think about. And so you have a compass, and the compass says to you, your body's in the now, but right now your head is too far in the future, and that is why you are feeling anxious. The compass, you look at the compass and it says, you're too far in the past, and that's why you are feeling guilty, or that's why you're feeling regret, or now you're in judgments of yourself, and that's why you're feeling inferior, or now you're in judgments of yourself, and that's why you're feeling superior. And so what it is a way for a person to teach themselves how they leave the present moment. Because you can't teach a person how to be in the present moment, because you could never take them out of the present moment. You know, but you can teach them how their minds take them out. And then if you want to practice, it's not that you try to that there is no past or future or stories about yourself or others. There are those things there. You're very useful. Anticipating the future is high survival value. Being able to learn from the past is very important. Being able to evaluate yourself and evaluate others in situations is important. But it's more important to be in your body and in being and listen from that deep and limitless mind and deep intelligence. And the book is more than that. It really is a journey of how, from infancy to adulthood, we lose connection to ourselves, and then how we can reclaim that connection. Very practical. It's very, very practical, as is the book that follows after it, which I think you've also published.
Yes, we have it here.
So mandala of being is like a kind of instrument for the practitioners of the consciousness, just to measure the different states of their attention, of their mind, in fact.
Sure. I mean, if you want to get
an instrument, a compass of the mind.
Yes, it's a compass for the mind and the feeling.
And the feeling, yeah.
Because where the mind takes you, it creates emotion.
Yeah.
You know, and often a lot of negative emotion. And so it becomes a way to practice. If you want to practice walking on a tightrope, you have to get up on the rope and practice. And you're going to fall one direction, fall the other direction, until your body becomes so subtle that it knows how to keep the balance. Yeah. You know, and here you begin to learn with practice how to stay in the being. You know, and know, okay, now that's my head talking. And it's interesting, I'm going to listen to what my head has to say, but I'm not necessarily going to believe it or identify with it and get lost in it. And then when I'm in being, there's more room for you and there's more room for our connection. And that's true for every relationship. So the mandala of being was, after almost 30 years of teaching, it was the book that was the summary of everything I had learned in the simplest way I could frame it. Thank you for publishing it.
Thank you for writing it.
Yeah, thank you.
And what about the healing coming from inside?
It's a continuation of mandala of being.
After our friends, this is the book.
After I'd written Mandala of Being, I kept teaching people how to work with the mandala, and I became better and better at teaching it. And I realized I could write how to use the mandala as a methodology for self-awareness, for self-knowledge. I could write it better than I had the first time, so I did. And then I also thought, there's one other thing that's very, very important that wasn't addressed deeply in the mandala of being, and that is that not every emotion is created by a thought. There are a whole range of feelings that come, we don't know even really where they come from. We can speculate. But the question is, or the problem is, what do you do when feeling is very difficult, when it's threatening, when it's frightening? Are we always going to be defending ourselves from this? Is there a way to be truly original and creative with the very dark, threatening feelings, so that we start to teach ourselves not just how to protect ourselves, not how to escape through busyness, distract ourselves with reading or food or shopping or workaholism? Is there something I could teach from my life experience about working with the very threatening feelings in a creative and healing way? And so there's a whole chapter in that book about working with difficult feeling, because difficult feeling is ultimately what breaks marriages up. It's what takes people to war. If you feel something you don't know how to make a space for in yourself, you will push him away and maybe end the relationship. And the same you would do, or I would do, anyone would do. If I know how to make a space for these really difficult feelings, and I find a creative way to be with that, and a creative way to be with you when I'm in these frightening, scary feelings, then I don't break the intimacy. So now the relationship has a space for these very frightening feelings. And most men are not willing to admit that they're afraid. And every man is afraid. And what is a man most?
Every human being is
every
afraid.
Every human being
sometimes
is afraid, but every man is afraid of the woman. And very few men admit it. And so, it's not weakness to be afraid. What the weakness is to, as Einstein said, if you do the same things over and over again and expect different results, that's crazy. We need to learn to do new things with these very scary feelings. Let's say, simple as possible, we need to learn to do new things with fear, besides defend ourselves, react, go to war, protect ourselves, judge others, cut off, withdraw, hide. We need to find new ways, and those new ways will transform us. And so that was a really important part of this book, how to do that.
I like very much this fact that you emphasize creating space. This is what we put our emphasis in our work, to create space. Really, this is the same word in Romanian, Create space for the difficulty, for the challenges, for the hindrances, for all those things. So
do something in a new way, so that we get a new outcome, a new result.
Thank you for writing the books.
It's not natural for me to write. It's hard work. So you're very welcome.
You said not all the emotions are provoked by the mind, and I was thinking just when you were saying that maybe this phenomenon of resonance put us in contact with fields of emotions, not mine or yours, but emotions of the humanity, the fear of the humanity, or of a large number of people. You deal in the same way with this kind of fears. There are emotions coming from the mass consciousness.
Yes, exactly. Here's an image that I love. Suppose you could. Many people have heard of Harry Potter, because
everybody.
Yeah, wonderful fiction, wonderful, wonderful fiction. Got so many young people to start reading again. But imagine that we could sit here right now, right, and imagine that what we take inside of us in this moment, or over 7 billion human beings on this planet, right, and each of those human beings has a certain tolerance, a certain capacity to hold fear in a healthy way before they become aggressive, before they become hiding and withdrawn, closed. So suppose I could wave my magic wand and every human being on the planet had twice the capacity to be with fear without closing, without attacking. Fight, flight. They had twice the capacity. So there would immediately be at least twice the generosity. Corruption comes from wanting more from me, and it comes from fear that I won't have enough. So now there'll be half as much corruption. There'll be twice as more willingness to be honest and risk exposure. The whole world would change. The political systems would operate differently. Relationships would change. The capacity for intimacy would change. I can think of nothing more transformative. I mean, you could say, let's say you said, you wave the wand and now people are twice as capable of love. It would mean they're also twice as capable of having a healthy relationship with fear, because fear stops love. Or whatever, there's only one fear, it has 1,000 names.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 names: fear of heights, fear of closed places, fear of abandonment, fear of fire, fear of death, fear of drowning, all these words, but the sensation. And so our work and your work of bringing people into their bodies, of bringing people into their breath, and to create a bigger and bigger space for all of these sensations. If you create a bigger space for fear, you will be capable of much more love.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're going about trying to heal the basic problem of the world, which is people believe their thoughts, they're identified with their thoughts, instead of being able to see that it's just a thought, and maybe not helpful, maybe not true. And we're afraid of feeling. You know, people are afraid of fear, and they don't have creative relationship with fear because no one taught them. And if you can teach yourself with the help of these books, or the help of your work, or work like our work that's being done all over the world by many, many people, you know, to have a healthy relationship with fear, the whole world changes. You know? And that's really what it comes down to. If we want to solve global warming, we have to have a better relationship with fear, because the corporations aren't evil. They just want to be safe. Safe means profits. You know? They don't want to be afraid. Afraid is not enough profit.
Yeah.
You know? It's fear. It's always fear, right? And you can't say to someone, be more loving, unless you say to them, I'm going to show you how to deal with fear, because fear, as I said a moment ago, stops love. Mm-hmm. So that's the work I have to do in myself. I have to do it in the context where there's the greatest fear, and that's the context of intimacy. You know, relationship is the place where the fears are the greatest, where the desire and the joy is also the greatest, where the love is the greatest, where the ecstasy is the greatest, but also where the fear is the greatest. And so when people are deeply afraid of intimacy, they treat each other as objects. And then all the problem with rape in the world has to do with making a woman an object, right? And the fear underneath that in these men of their own feelings. Ultimately, of the feminine, of the goddess, of the divine, that divine feminine intelligence. It's not, they're still unawakened to that. And so then it's projected. Woman becomes an object to abuse or to just take pleasure without any care for your pleasure or your health or your well-being. And it's very sad, but it starts with fear.
Yeah.
It starts with ignorance. The Buddha would say ignorance, and the Judeo-Christian Islamic world would say perverse will. You know, we're not doing what God wants us to do. And both are true. It's ignorance and it's perverse will. But to change that, you can't just read a book. You have to have experience. Yeah. Well, you could read that book.
All of them.
My books, yeah.
All of them.
But my books are very experiential. You mean?
Yes.
You have, they say, do this, try this, try.
Yeah. We only publish this kind of books, you know, that.
This is the reason that we are publishing these books, because they are very experiential. This is the last book, The Black Butterfly. You are in Romania, you come from London, you go in Colombia, you travel all over the world with your work. Do you feel that something important is changing in the consciousness of the humanity?
Oh yes, absolutely.
around the countries that you're going, yeah.
You know, cultures are very different, and you see certain differences in the cultures. But what we're talking about here is true everywhere.
Yeah.
It's true in any culture. It's true for men and women. It's true for almost any age. Once you're old enough to want to ask, who am I and how can I become a better human being, then this work is the same work everywhere in the world. So this is planetary spirituality. It's not religion. This is a teaching of transformation that is useful for every person anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Whereas the religions tend to select a certain group and create exclusion. At the heart of the religions are practices that are useful to everyone. You have to take the cloak of the dogma and the traditions off and get to the heart. What I see changing is the awakening of the deeper feminine.
Yeah.
You know, people want to stop being afraid to feel, and people want to heal, and people want love, and there is human rights is a theme, and the rights of women and is a profound theme. Protection of nature and the environment is a profound theme. All of these are part of that deeper feminine. The sense of we instead of me, you know, and I see it everywhere. And then my hope is that there's the teaching and people will use it, and some people do, but there's also showing people through experience what really matters most to them, so that after that they want to keep growing. Because you can't depend on a teacher. You have to take something from that teacher and then use it.
But it's more comfortable with a teacher. He can tell you what to do, what to think, what to feel,
You don't have
what
the
is the path,
responsibility.
in how many steps. So it's very comfortable. You don't have to assume yourself some decisions.
Every form of teaching has a shadow,
Yes.
no matter how you
Yeah.
try to do it.
Of course.
For a certain person, being able to depend on that teacher to guide them is like having for the first time a loving father or a loving
Yeah.
mother, and a deep psychological healing can take place. For another kind of person like you, just in the way you said that, depending on a teacher would be unnecessary. And you couldn't let yourself do it. So you can learn from a teacher, but you wouldn't become a devotee. I can't be a devotee either, but I certainly see that even my way of teaching may not be sufficient to help a person who needs more support for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Also, you know, my way of teaching is showing people what they can do to teach themselves. But I can't make anybody do it.
Yeah.
You know. So what is the spark inside of a person that makes them decide that they want to become, before they die, the most conscious, alive person they can be? You know? Why does someone practice a violin for tens of thousands of hours to become a true maestro?
Yeah.
You know, where does that spark come from? So I think then that the teaching is important, but being the kind of human being that other people, after they meet you, say, I want to be more like that person, and a seed. I don't want to be that person, I want to be more like that person in my own way. So there's a seed that's planted inside of them by meeting maybe me or others. A seed. And then the seed grows. And none of us are going to see the outcome. We're just midwives. You know, the birth, we're not going to see the birth. And maybe there is never going to be a birth, but there's going to be a constant birthing. Yes, I don't think there'll ever be a birth, but just a constant birthing. And unfortunately, I'm not going to get to see, you know, whether we do get our act together enough that we protect the environment and become sustainable environmentally and energetic, you know, with our energy use. And whether men really start to let themselves be penetrated by the wisdom that women have, whether the women can get past their anger to become teachers of their men instead of opponents.
Yeah.
Because there's been so much injustice, and we don't want to replace injustice with another form of injustice. So we have to see what will unfold, but we won't get to. So we just do our best. And a book leaves a trail behind, just like a painting or a piece of music or poetry or sculpting. It leaves something behind.
Well, we go to the finish little by little, but before to finish, the last question about this process of transformation of the consciousness of the whole humanity. In fact, it looks like in this process of transformation we cross a period of crisis, because okay, something is changing, but many people observe that the tensions in the society, not here or in the States or everywhere in the world, seem to be more and more strong. The tensions, I mean, political, ecological, military, I don't know, financial crisis, social crisis, a lot of... could you give us a point of view about this process of transformation, and in the same time looking at this all kind of crisis?
The process of transformation isn't a straight line. It's not even a bumpy line. You know, you make progress. There's no specific state you can hold on to. You can achieve a certain level of consciousness and then practice it. But before you can go to the next level, there is going to be some sort of a crisis. And I think a better word for it would be discontinuity. You know, you lose control in a way. There is a period of, let's call it, what seems to be psychologically, emotionally chaos. In a business, it may be that the business goes bankrupt, and then it reorganizes and it's more healthy. In a relationship, maybe the couple separates and one lives away for a while because something really disrupted the relationship. And they may grow apart, and then both may be able to learn from what they learned in their separation and create new relationships that are healthier. Or they may come back together, but the discontinuity, the separation, was essential. People are very afraid of that period of discontinuity in transformation, and it's necessary and unavoidable. It's like metamorphosis. The butterfly is, first there's a caterpillar, then it creates its cocoon, and it goes through this metamorphosis, and it comes out as a butterfly. We also go through these periods. Very typically at the end of our 20s or at the age of 30, there's a major change that takes place. Then we have the so-called midlife crisis, which can take place much earlier or much later than true midlife. But it's the point where everything that you had to repress in order to build your life, the things you had to repress, maybe your artistic nature, to build your careers, suddenly at age of 45 or 40 or 50, nothing feels right, nothing feels good. You're dissatisfied, and it's time to bring out what was unlived. So those kinds of times where the shadow has to come back out and the part that was unlived has to be lived is a normal part of the journey and unavoidable. And it's going to be unavoidable in the marriage, in the couple. It's going to be unavoidable in your personal journey of transformation. It's going to be unavoidable in the evolution of societies, and you had a revolution here of a kind, but look at how different the society is now from 30 years ago. And the environmental crisis in front of us is the most important one maybe humanity has practically ever faced, because the collective effect of human beings has reached the limit for the earth to absorb it without profound disruption of the weather, let's say, in the simplest sense. So there's going to need to be a discontinuity in our relationship to each other and our relationship to the earth. And it's going to be chaotic. You know, the oil companies still see that they have as much oil is still in the ground as they've taken out of it. We have no limit. We could burn enough oil to completely destroy the atmosphere, burn enough fossil fuels. We're going to have to decide not to, and to substitute something else. So that crisis is unavoidable. You know, it's a crisis of ego, of a certain stage of development in human consciousness reaching its limits. And we have to go from me to we. And to go from me to we is not going to be easy. The last thing I want to say is that it's not, in many ways, it's not worse now than it's been. It always seems that way to us, but if you are a student of history, and I am in a small way a student of history, I can assure you the hatred, the polarization, the distrust, the attack, verbal and emotional and militarily, went on 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, no different than today. The real difference, the one tremendous difference was there was not enough people to destroy the environment. You know, now there are enough people. We use energy in a certain way. We consume energy in a certain way. We have a water crisis coming toward us that's as bad as global warming, drinking water crisis. And either we're going to find a way that the world works for everybody, or is going to be a growing number of people suffering horribly with a very small enclave of wealthy people here and there protecting themselves with military. That will not serve consciousness. In a certain sense, we will, in a way, regress. So, I don't know what the outcome is going to be. Don't have any idea. But I do know this. If you put people together in groups, they don't know each other, and you treat everyone with respect, and you ask them to listen to each other with respect, and then you ask them to be honest about themselves, those simple things, and you ask them to maybe hold to a principle greater than just their own selfish self-interest. Love grows in those people. Tolerance for each other grows in those people. A profound sense of connection between each other grows in those people, and then a certain percentage of those people go through a profound discontinuity where they become one with the world and are forever changed. It's not permanent, but it's the seed of a new level of consciousness. If you put people together with distrust and with words attacking each other, you end up with warfare and you end up with them killing each other. We've seen it happen forever. But what we haven't seen so clearly is how easy it is to create love between human beings that don't know each other. All you have to do is be honest, treat people with respect, make a space for everyone to be heard, judge no one, and love will flourish. Connection will flourish, intimacy will flourish, and people will become more and more authentic, and they will learn. And so, we are capable of solving these problems. And most people aren't yet. They're more at a level of survival. And they're not at a level of, transformation. And yet it is coming.
It happens already. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Richard, for being here with us in our home, transformed in studio, and for being in Romania. Yeah. Soon you will meet today the explorers of the consciousness, the Romanian explorers of the consciousness.
No, thank you, Horia.
Are you nervous?
To meet them?
Yeah.
No, I'm look forward.
Excited?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Great.
The only reason I could be nervous is if I thought I wasn't living what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the best I can to live what I'm saying. So, therefore, I have nothing to hide and nothing to prove. And I just want to meet other human beings that are on a journey. And if my life can contribute to them, I know their lives can contribute to me, then it should be very lovely.
There are many people coming from all over the country, and very excited to meet you finally. So thank you for accepting, giving voice to our invitation.
Yeah, you're for the first time in Romania, but maybe not for the last time in Romania.
Well, hopefully not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. And again, we're planting seeds.
Yeah, you are planting seeds.
But we don't know how the plants will grow.
It depends on us how we feed those, how we feed the seeds. Thank you.
Ok, thank you, Richard. Aceasta a fost, dragi prieteni ai Călătoriei Inimii, întâlnirea de debut cu Richard Moss. Dacă sunteți curioși să aflați mai multe, vă invităm pe site-ul nostru pe elenafrancis.ro ca să găsiți cărțile lui Richard Moss. Iar pentru cei care n-au apucat să se înscrie la workshop-ul care va începe astăzi, next time. Poate că va fi și la anul o întâlnire. Vă mulțumim tuturor. Thank you. Mulțumesc, iubita mea.
Mulțumesc, iubita mea.
You're entirely welcome.